So, welcome to the inaugural episode of Turns Out Podcast. I'm your host, Jules, and I'm here with my buddy Avner. Say hello.
Hello.
There he is. Such a good-looking guy. So good-looking.
Yeah, I sound good-looking, too. So that's the best thing I like about myself.
I like how you dropped an octave when you said how good-looking you were.
I always say this.
So, just now, earlier, we were talking about the benefits of construction, which, if you know me and Avner, we are not the most home improvement types. Not really. But that's why I want to learn it, because I don't know shit about, I could, I could turn a wrench, and I fix stuff around the house all the time, but I want to be that go-to guy. I want to be proficiently good, especially because my dad, he's a carpenter. Before he became an architect, that's how he got himself through architectural school. He actually ran his own carpentry, finish, and construction thing, and so he knew firsthand how to do stuff. And that's just such an impressive. It's always like a very basic.
It could be, on any level. It could be a gratifying hobby. At that level, you can make it as a side job, or it can be like a full-on passion. You can realize you like it later on.
It's just such a great, and we're gonna get into meditation later, but I think it's really important for people to have kind of this like not mindless, but just kind of something they can kind of work at for a long period of time, without any kind of music in the background, just you and yourself, kiddling wood or working on a canoe, or like Nick Offerman, the Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. He actually he makes canoes, and
he's excellent.
He's
a
really
craftsman.
He's a craftsman, exactly, and he's like renowned and
artisan.
He's an artisan, exactly. And I think that's just so awesome to have on the side. And,
in fact, I don't know if you knew this. You probably knew this, that he, for a project, he needed help from a buddy of him doing a video for him, some instructional video about making canoes. Yeah. And actually, he didn't pay him with money. He paid him with a canoe that he made for him. Yeah. Which I thought was awesome.
I was actually just listening to the Adam Carolla podcast. Well, he has a main podcast where he just talks about stuff. But then he has more specific podcasts like the Car Cast, which talks about car work, and another thing I want to get into, and Ace on the House, which is him talking about construction, answering questions. And Nick Offerman was actually on the first episode, and he told that exact same story. And the guy, he shot it and edited it, and I think he now he works on another show now, thanks to that thing, because Nick Swanson had some connection. Nick Offerman had some connections. Doing the Parks and Recreation thing, so it's real nice. It's cool how little dumb things like that can explode someone's career.
Yeah, the more benefits that you have, especially if you're really good at something, it could be something very small. Some people maybe wouldn't think carpentry in that association, but it can definitely be. If you're excellent at something, it stands out. Harrison Ford was an excellent carpenter.
It's very true.
It wasn't just an average carpenter, and George Lucas sought him out, and that definitely pay dividends for him. So
Harrison Ford, that's his name. He's done a few stuff. He's done a few things. I like that guy.
He did things.
He did a few things. You saw that shirt that was photoshopped on him, right?
Yeah.
You
photoshopped it?
It wasn't me. Someone photoshopped it, but it wasn't a real shirt.
Had that shirt.
No, neither did Ian McKellen.
He totally would have that shirt, though.
He would.
I would imagine him.
It fit his personality. I'm fucking.
I'm amazing.
No fucking.
You should know this already.
Not sure if you heard. I was surprised I didn't see Jack Ryan there, because he was in two different.
Oh, that's right.
Jack Ryan.
But that's how amazing he is, that you can take out movies that were moderately successful and pretty famous, and that's not even the biggest movies about him, and you can easily forget them because you're getting interference from all these incredibly famous movies.
I'm just like, man, what a career, just Blade Runner, Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Jack Ryan.
Yeah. All started with carpentry.
Yeah. And that can start with anything, you could be really good at working cars or wedding videos, whatever.
Right. You can do like Steven Spielberg's granddaughter's wedding video or something, and he'd be, kid, I've had a camera my whole life. I've never seen such craftsmanship.
It's like, hey, George, Marty, who was that guy? Who was that guy? Yeah. I like the cut of his jib. I like how he used Coldplay for the goddamn wedding video. But
out of the water.
Bullseye.
We've been looking for somebody for our second Armageddon movie. And
hey, Jerry, Michael.
yeah.
Jerry, Mike.
Bruckheimer.
Mm-hmm.
Brockman.
Kevin Brockman. Did you see that old episode?
But I was thinking, I was torn between thinking, I wanted to despise Jackie Bruckheimer and then, pure respect for him for how. Well, I think I settled somewhere in the middle where I still remain the right to dislike him, but I also think that it's absolutely incredible to be so successful, especially when you recognize, something. I don't know if you recognize, but if he's so successful, he might that his product is not, so low level, but yet you're so good at tailoring it to everybody.
Well, it's easy to forget because Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Bay are so, you think of the two of them together so often, but Jerry Bruckheimer has done so many movies without Michael Bay
that were good though.
That were amazing. I'll pull up a list right now, but just off the bat, I know he did like, I think he did. What was it? Right now.
Did he produce
Da Vinci Code?
I forget that military HBO short series that you like. I forget.
Band of Brothers.
Was it Jerry Bruckheimer?
That was actually That was actually Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks who produced it themselves. It's funny. First thing I look at, CSI Miami, CSI Bad Boys 3, and okay, hold on. Not the best examples, but Amazing Race. Okay, he's in a lot of shitty. Okay, the Pirates movies.
He's the lowest common denominator. Coyote Ugly. Remember the Titans, Pearl Harbor. Well, Pearl Harbor should be less of a surprise. He's very well.
Okay, he did Black Hawk Down, which was a respectable movie for some people.
Yeah, but it was also funded by the military, and it was a very obvious commercial attempt at,
Right. Yeah, a lot of slow motion helicopter propellers.
Exactly. Very true.
He did Crimson Tide. That's huge.
Okay.
He did Dangerous Minds. That was The Rock, was one of the few respectable Michael Bay
Top
movies.
Gun had some qualities to it. I
Gun.
mean, it's very cheesy, but it was good quality cheesy at least when it came out.
I mean, the theme song alone justifies the whole 2 hours.
Very good guitar player. Like Billy Joel, guitar player, played that.
You know what? I take it back.
Yeah, he did mostly lower common denominator stuff.
King Arthur, not very good, but I like the goal.
But in any case, the important thing I think here to take is the important message is that he, was excellent at that. I mean, even that is a very difficult skill, especially if he has any sort of intelligence, which he probably has, to realize a movie is not excellent, but yet market it very, very well and have it become incredibly successful. And he has consistently done that. Yeah. Which kind of makes me think, he can. It's not like the movies have some quality to them, even though they're bad, but rather these are bad movies, and you can give him any kind of bad movie, and he would just make it incredibly successful. Bad movies that he makes are successful.
Mass appeal is a very hard, sought out thing. I mean, you look.
But the question I have, I'm sorry, but the question I have is, I think Michael. He's worked with Michael Bay with every movie.
No,
because Michael Bay has made some unsuccessful movies, right? That were commercially unsuccessful.
Very few that I can think of.
He was that successful.
Well,
because I was thinking, I wonder.
He hasn't made as many movies as you think he would have made.
Yeah, maybe he made like 8, 12 movies.
Some maybe even less than 8. I'm trying to here. Yeah, Michael Bay. He made more than as a producer. He's also
12 movies.
Yeah, he's made 18 movies actually. Now that I think about it.
But when you're looking at them, just like a superficial glance, do they all seem like blockbuster hits?
Like his movie was Bad Boys, which was a hit. Was
Definitely.
The first Bad Boys. The Rock, a hit.
Right.
Armageddon, a hit. Pearl Harbor, critical panning, but still made a good amount of box office.
Okay.
Bad Boys 2.
The Island was successful?
The Island, I don't know how successful The Island was, but it was actually the more positive, critically reviewed one. Okay. Which is funny that there's a upside down kind of pyramid with that.
And there you go.
Transformers.
All of them were successful.
All the Transformers.
Yeah, and it was really, really funny, separate kind of issue here, but I've noticed that I've read reviews about the second Transformers and then one about the third one, and it seems always to be the same review. The reviewer, in which the reviewer cannot stand himself from watching the movie, and it's like, every cliche became more obvious with this next movie, but they still come watching it, and they cannot, and it's almost like an addiction. It seems incredibly.
The saddest thing about the Transformer films,
like they can't help themselves, like an addiction.
It's exactly. It's well, first of all a lot of modern day reviewers are actually kind of our age, or even maybe 5 years older, which means they grew up with Transformers in the 80s. So they have no choice but to indulge that nostalgic, you know, that nostalgic sort of. They have that drive to see robots fucking shit up, and it's a very primal thing, and it's just on top of us Americans as a culture wanting to see shit blow up during their summer. It's robots doing it, and CGI is getting so good now that it's like, you know, any asshole can kind of put that on screen. And I think the biggest thing about it is that it comes out during a time. Usually they always come out in the summer, and so people are in a certain mode where they want to see something like not have to think a lot. Like a lot of people say, like sometimes I just don't want to think. I just want to be entertained. And for people like, you know, us, we were not entertained by that. It's just frustrating. I actually didn't bother seeing the third Transformers until like it was like when it comes into those midway theaters where it's like a few dollars to go see it, and I fell asleep by the end of it. And the last action sequence is the part where everyone kept saying, "Oh my god, it's worth just for that last whatever." It's the most repetitive thing. Even as a stupid action film, it got stupid repetitive, really bad repetitive, and it's just. But people go see it, and I mean, what's the average IQ in this country? It's like what, 90 to 110?
Well, yeah, it's right. Those are the standard deviations. It's set up. Well, they're 15, but it's around 100. Yeah, it's set up so it's 100. I mean, but
there you go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true. I think that there is that, and I definitely think that that's same issue with getting addicted to something. You want to give the people large amounts of something that's doesn't take a lot of effort, and that's a pure formula for addiction. You know, most things that are addictive are, you know, immediate gratification. You can really easily get into it really hard. Also, you know, like like a really simple movie. You know, because less thinking, so you're more in that zombie mode where it's easier to take more and more in.
You're receptive,
and then already you're getting kind of stimulated, addicted in a kind of sensory way, where you're visually and auditorily stimulated to it. It's the same thing with reality shows, but it's also true. We're full of ourselves, but it's also true also before reality shows, even sitcoms. You know, it's the same formula. It's just a way that's very low level for people not to think.
Back in caveman days, people would stare at fire.
Yeah, right.
You know,
well, I think fire has more. As a Buddhist, I think fire at least has some advantages. Yes, you want to look at the fire. Don't look away from the fire.
Yeah, I actually would rather see a chimney, a flame, for 2 hours than seeing another Transformers films, and they're making the fourth one. Just in case you were wondering,
there's no reason not to.
That's the saddest truth. In business-wise, there's no reason not to.
And I've noticed this more recently, but
no
maybe
Shia LaBeouf though. Shia LaBeouf won't be in it.
Oh, okay. They'll get probably a better guy. Even considering the circumstances, he'll probably be better. It's the same.
You know what's interesting? I actually had a dream. I had a dream where Joseph Gordon-Levitt had replaced Shia LaBeouf in everything he did. Yeah. Including the Indiana Jones, and it was a lot better. Just because Joseph Gordon.
He's not like phizically like maybe a lead role type person, but he's.
No, we got a message.
He's an excellent actor.
I think he's a very good actor.
Oh, look at colors.
We gotta
put more Avner. Is what they're seem to be saying. So
I'm just saying. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Goku is a Saiyan. That's his species. But it's also play on words such as "I am just saying," so it's pretty excellent joke from my brother there.
Great meme pun.
Brilliant.
There you go.
But go ahead and take off the chat sounds. We don't need those.
Nope.
So So enough with the Jerry Bruckheimer and Michael Bay's of the world. Let's talk about directors that we really do like, who are also commercially successful. And as predictably so, I'm going to talk about Nolan for a little bit. And I was actually going to bring out the fact that certain outliers, you know, as good as commercially successful as the Michael Bay movies are and Jerry Bruckheimer movies are, they don't go into the billions the way The Dark Knight has or Inception has. And I think a reason for that is that when you have a more complete film that stimulates, you know, both, I guess, the senses as well as the mind, just movies that make you think afterwards. What makes a movie have a lot of success is not that, like, if every human in the world were to watch a movie once, it wouldn't be as successful as Inception because people go back and watch it multiple times, and that's what makes a movie really multiple viewings. What makes a movie super fucking successful.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. I mean, Avatar is still the #1 movie of all time, and that's not necessarily a smart film, but it is groundbreaking in its 3D-ness. So that's...
And it was good in some... I mean, if you view it for what it is, for what I think it is, which is like almost like a mythical, almost like a children's movie that adults can also watch.
Right.
Then
it's like Shrek.
Then it was actually quite good. Actually, like the way the obviously the character arc in movies like that have to be very kind of strict and very similar to stuff that we've seen before. But I mean it was in some ways cheesy, but it was a good movie for kids and excellent in some ways even.
It's probably my favorite version of Pocahontas I've seen. But that's
I like Kevin Costner's better. By the way, Kevin Costner. By the way, completely separate issue. Let's go there. But with Kevin Costner, I saw him giving the eulogy to Whitney Houston. Man, he's excellent speaker. I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was an excellent, super intelligent guy.
Let's bring it up. You think it's on YouTube?
It is. It's quite long. Maybe we shouldn't.
No.
It's its own talk.
We'll cut it out.
Yeah. But he was incredible. Well, he's an actor, so already, I mean, he should be good in front of a crowd of people. But he was so eloquent, but also so touching, and he was just so. He had such a deep understanding of I felt of the process of grief, of human psychology, and then he was sort of an outcast. He mentioned it too. I mean, that he was in a place where he was sort of an ethnic minority. Yeah, and then his funeral, everybody
at the funeral.
Yeah, but actually he was able to really put a very when you give a speech like that, you have to connect with an audience, and if you're coming in, white person in a crowd that everybody's black, you want to connect with them.
Please, Avner, let's call him for what he is, a honky.
A honky, that's right.
That's the correct term.
And the way that he was connected was I thought it was excellent. And
let's give that a listen.
This feels right. I'd like to thank Sissy and Dion for the honor of being here, and for everybody in the church treating my wife and I so gracefully. I'm going to say some stories, maybe some of them you know, maybe some of you don't. I wrote them down because I didn't want to miss anything. The song "I Will Always Love You" almost wasn't. It wasn't supposed to be in the movie. The first choice was going to be "What Becomes of a Broken Heart." But it had been out the year before in another movie, and we felt that it wouldn't have the impact, and so we couldn't use it. So what becomes of our broken hearts? Whitney returns home today to the place where it all began, and I urge us all, inside and outside, across the nation and around the world, to dry our tears, suspend our sorrow, and perhaps our anger, just long enough to remember the sweet miracle of Whitney. Never forgetting that Sissy and Bobby Christina are sit among us. Your mother and I had a lot in common. I know many at this moment are thinking, really? She's a girl, you're a boy. You're white, she's black. We heard you like to sing, but our sister could really sing. So what am I talking about? Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston, they don't have anything in common at all. Well, you'd be wrong about that. We both grew up in the Baptist church. Wasn't as big as this. My grandmother played the piano, and she led the choir. And her two daughters, my mom and my aunt, both sang in it. The rest of my family, uncles, aunts, and cousins, sat every Sunday out front and watched. My earliest memories are tied to that old church in Paramount. I remember seeing a gold shovel go into the ground, people praying about it and thinking, wow, something big was going to go here. And I watched my father and the rest of the men build it from the ground up. I was probably 4 years old and seemed to be always in the way. I wanted to help. I wanted to be in on the action. One of the men snapped down a red line where the choir would be standing one day and said, have at it. As many nails as you want. All on this line.
He's probably one of the greatest actors of all time just because he knows how to space out his speeches. I've noticed he takes all the appropriate pauses, and he also has that unique thing where you believe everything he says.
Yeah, he do.
Sam Waterston has that. Dennis Quaid has that, and it's a very rare thing amongst actors, even superior actors or supposedly superior actors. You know, they have that where like their excess of flair might seem it's more fun to watch sometimes. For example, Robert Downey Jr., who I think is a superior actor to all three of the people we just mentioned. However, he's a little mischievous. He's a little too charming. You know, he's got that salesman thing a little bit. So you're not entirely. I mean, he's smart. He just seems really smart, but
seems like he's playing too hard.
Not necessarily too hard, but he seems like there's something else going on, and it's still effortless. He can still deliver any kind of speech effortlessly, and I'm sure if he was at a eulogy, you know, he would draw as many tears and a lot of those I'm sure too. But it's Kevin Costner was that type. It's just something that it's bred into you. You can't really learn that, and it's just I mean, maybe you can, but
I think to some extent, I mean, it's obviously you can learn the pauses to some extent, and if you have.
It's not necessarily the pauses,
but some skills, obviously, because you're an actor, you're going to make all those little things feel that much better because you have years of acting, which will take a lot longer to learn. I mean, I've noticed that politicians are excellent at that. I remember hearing, actually, it was a politician's wife. It was the very hated Syrian prime minister's wife, Assad Bashar's wife.
Now, was she hated or was he hated and he just had to be married? She had to be married to him.
She had to be married to him. He's doing gross human rights violations right now. He's shooting into crowds, into protesters, his own people.
What do the protesters have? Uzis, like in the end of Rules of Engagement.
They have flowers, maybe. Maybe they have thorny flowers. That's
the flowers have thorns, sir. Waste those motherfuckers. Yeah,
that's awful. It's pretty awful. But the wife was actually quite impressive speaker, and I was thinking, what is a quality that makes her such an excellent speaker? She's not really saying too much,
right? But
it was the pauses. She wasn't really relenting or giving in, and talking any faster than the pace of her thoughts. She wasn't forcing anything, and so it was coming out a lot more composed and a lot more natural. And I think that's true for him. But I also think that in this circumstance, he seems like he's really feeling it. Maybe it's his acting, but I don't think he's that good of an actor. He seems like he really cares.
No, I mean.
And if you saw this later, if you see this, I mean, you really see how like very deeply he felt connected to this person, and he really genuinely feels like a person of value died, you know, and he cares.
That's, I think, more than anything else, any kind of personal connection. It's more like she had this incredible voice in such a model-like body.
Yeah.
In the 80s, that was a big shock. I mean, she had Aretha Franklin pipes.
Yeah.
But she had like Halle Berry style body, and he happened to work with her.
No, but for me, I feel like the reason why he said and
like how much interaction do you think they had in the past 30 years?
But probably not that much. But I think
probably zero.
No, but I think it is. If you keep seeing it, is what you feel is that he really saw that there was a person with a lot of talent, but also a person with a lot of. All the stories that he tells were not about how perfect her vibrato was, but rather how imperfect she was. You know, like her weaknesses, her own fears. He seems like he feels like what a tragedy to have a person, a very, you know, a good human being who just had, you know, a lot of suffering in their life, and what a waste that is. That seems like the general message. Not like I knew her, like best friends, but rather, you know, generally this is a human being, and this is a person who could have, you know, enjoyed life a little more and given more love to other people as well.
Actors also, on a psychological level, have a shitload of empathy. They have to. It's their job. So it makes sense that, you know, he, even though he wasn't closer to her than, say, like, a family member or part of her entourage.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that he probably has more empathy for her than her entourage, who probably are feeling more like, oh shit, what are we going to do now?
Yeah. He particularly liked her for many reasons. I mean, I don't know if you remember the facts about this movie, but about the bodyguard, but he insisted that she would be there, and she told him that she was doing a tour that would take a year, and he forced the studios to wait a year for her.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So he actually particularly found her charming and liked her. So
I mean, those two.
And he's a very kind of charming, almost like a classic 1920s gentleman, like the way he talks. You see one of the quotes. It was something. Forgot what he said. He said, "I kissed her for the rest of America, and then later I kissed her for me," or something like that. He's just kind of like a charming old gentleman. I don't know. So I mean, that seems like
I don't believe
that you've had of her.
It's sad.
Like a protector.
No, it's, right.
You know?
Well, makes sense. Yeah. Right. That's like a bodyguard. Say.
How do you? So clear now.
It just makes sense. No,
yeah. He took some emotional bullets for her.
He took. Yeah, that's.
That is what I'm saying.
Quintus from Gladiator, he played the assassin, who I think do you remember Gladiator? Remember the best friend buddy who not betrays, but follows the Emperor instead of Russell Crowe? Remember the one who, when Russell Crowe figures out that Joaquin Phoenix killed the dad, the Emperor, Quintus, his like right-hand man.
His right-hand man is the guy with the Irish smile from Braveheart.
He's his squire, but on the battlefield, when he goes, remember in the very beginning, he goes.
I think it's pretty obvious that I don't remember that guy.
I can shake it from you. When he goes, people should know when they're conquered. Would you, Quintus? Would I? All right, we're getting a call now from one of our fans. Hold on a second. So earlier, off air, we were talking about the science of symmetry, beauty, and porn. What were we gonna say, Avner?
Symmetry in porn. So, well, stuff from if the stuff that I remember from psychology studies about this, that wasn't my specialty or anything. But from what I remember,
I believe you did a lot of off textbook research on the subject of porn.
I dabbled a bit, and
okay.
I think the main thing, well, not for porn, but first we're starting off with attractiveness. I think symmetry was mentioned as one of the major factors in making us attracted to somebody else physically. In terms of visual attractiveness, not just symmetry, but also average features. Average meaning not like what everybody else has, but relatively in terms of size, to be somewhere in the middle is attractive. And
average within their own proportions and
right.
And okay.
And there's another thing that ties it all together, and that calls ease of processing. People that are attractive tend to be people that it's very easy to process them. That's why you look at them and you can very quickly process visually how they look. And that also goes with fashion. When you dress up, you always want to dress up in a way that goes together, and that also goes with this principle of things that are ease of processing, things that are easy to process.
Accessibility. Almost.
That's why they always say that's right. That's why people say that it's very. It looks bad to have a lot of wrinkles on your shirt. That's because if you have a lot of wrinkles, create all these different patterns that take longer to process, which are consequently judged as less attractive. So
how come in the 80s there's a lot of black and white checkered dresses and polka dots and stripes?
I'm not good enough to explain the 80s, I think.
Oh, okay. I understand.
That's one.
It's a mystery to us
all. I'm not an 80s expert.
I'm not an 80ologist.
That sounds like it's like an 80s term, yeah.
It's actually an album from Duran Duran. It's their fourth album, I believe.
I imagine a black and white eagle on the cover of that album.
It's a checkered black and white eagle, yeah, and you can only see it if you take a distance from it, kind of like an optical illusion.
Of course.
But all right, that's so. Also, speaking of Kevin Costner earlier doing the Whitney, we were talking about how women find him so attractive, but like to the nth degree, like he's like an 11 out of 10 apparently, and to the average guy, to me he seems like he's reliably good looking, stably good, good looking in a stable way. I never considered him gorgeous or use words like
man pretty.
Right, like no, because he seems a little more blue collar, which I think now people will find more attractive because especially in the early 2000s, there was this big metro movement, guys with like eyeliner and like the black nail polish on the thumbs and more effeminate kind of look, a lot of graphic tees, a lot of a lot of manscaping. That doesn't count. So maybe there's a resurgence, I think,
well, I don't think
what women
considering the...
For example, just really quick example,
sure.
in the 90s, every single guy with a shirt off had a shaved chest or a waxed chest. Look at Ryan Reynolds. Look at pretty much, and all the actors, they all had to have their chest shaved. And recently, now girls find that gay or whatever, and so now they're all growing it out, except all the guys with waxed chests, now their hair patterns are all weird and stuff. And I'll pull a picture later with Ryan Reynolds. But basically, like, well, because he specifically, Van Wilder days, shaved, clean chest. And recently he's in a movie with Denzel Washington called Safe House. Denzel Washington, of course, being the most symmetrical man in Hollywood. He had, like, he grown out hair, but it's all like it grows horizontally now. And it's
you bring up a lot of things here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The point is, I feel like a lot of what's attractive, especially for women, is very subjective and comes in cycles. And it goes and what it comes in fads like fashion. And so it's hard to determine, what they're going to find attractive tomorrow, which is why that has been my original critique of any sort of method or any kind of system that is broken down to where you can paint it by numbers. Because the second the word gets out that this works on women, women will purposely oppose it or contradict it, especially the smart ones who are actually life dumb. They'll be damned if they'll be lumped together all these dumb hoes or whatever that they don't want to become, and so they're going to resist all. For example, the first guy who said, "Did it hurt? Did what hurt? Falling from heaven?" That must have worked for the first guy who used it, but after the fifth,
maybe 100 guy even.
Right. Well, the first 100 guys that use it definitely worked, but around 299th, the word got out a bit, and then people stopped falling for it, quote unquote. And then, so any kind of canned lines or canned routines, girls are gonna look for. For example, peacocking, I don't think works now anymore because girls know the term peacocking. It's like this sort of secret warfare. This is kind of
like religious. Sorry to interrupt, but I feel like if we bring up more point, it's going to be difficult to remember all of them.
Sure.
I'm going to start from the ending. So basically, with peacocking or any kind of trick is going to be on that level. Talking about that level, it's going to be kind of like religion, where as people get more smart, also the church ways of tricking people, into belief is going to get more subtle, more sophisticated. So. Peacocking started with just dressing as ridiculous as you can for attention, so people will notice you, so they start talking to you. And now it became something more subtle that actually everybody uses, which is dress nice. If you dress really nice, people will be like and have one accessory. If you dress nice and are subtle, this is something that no person could argue that you're doing for attention in particular, but it's just enough where it looks nice.
I'm saying womenizers have been dressing nice since the turn of the century.
But I'm saying the systems get more sophisticated. That's one argument, but that's not even the point. I think the point here is you bring up a good point in general, but I feel like the whole way that I'm looking at it is a little different. I feel like trends have changed. You're right. Trends are changing, especially any kind of really mechanic way of talking to people. If you have the same kind of ways to talk to people, trying to reproduce it every time. However, the core principles actually stayed the same, and that's true even for 80s fashions. If you want to apply it, the reason why a confident guy is attractive is not because there's a lot of Nancy boy emo persons that accentuate how manly he is, but rather because it's always been attractive because of the underlying social principles behind how we're programmed. Men are programmed to be dominant. This is something that we had in social conditioning in multiple subtle ways for centuries, for thousands of years, since the beginning of evolution. For men, it was necessary to be dominant in various ways, in various contexts. Maybe it's to be strong enough to get the kill, or maybe in a place, in different environments, actually to be thin enough so you can climb trees really well. It doesn't matter. You had to be dominant in some ways. And today's society, it means social dominance, being able to communicate with people very well, being successful at what you do, maybe not necessarily physical dominant. That has stayed, and unless that fundamental underlying principle changes, women are still going to be attracted to it. That has nothing to do with what you say.
That's completely true. But let's bring up the 90s, for example. It was sexist for a guy to in the 90s specifically. Yeah. It was sexist for the guy to insist on paying for dinner. It was considered sexist for him to do all these courtesy things that seem basic now.
But I wonder if women were really resisting, if a really confident guy who was happy with himself did something like that, I
As
wonder
a guy,
we were saying they're resistant, but I wonder if a woman would resist.
Well, I got a blowjob when I was in 8th grade, and I can tell you it wasn't because I paid for the meals and stuff. It was because I treated girls as if they were superior, which we know they're not. But there was that notion of, especially things like Dawson's Creek and a lot of CW. It was the sensitive guy that was getting laid a lot,
But I don't think the sensitive guy was. I think sensitive is fine, but it's the way
it's cyclical regardless, because now it's more close to what we're talking about now.
Fads could work for you. Like, for example, I heard of a guy who wasn't, particularly
Doggy Style didn't come back until
but he just had
2004,
red hair, and he met this guy wasn't really confident in particular, but he went to this bar, and he just met a girl who just had a crush on David Carradine. Not David Carradine, what's his
Keith
name?
Carradine.
The guy, David, the
Caruso.
guy... Caruso, that's right. And he had red hair, so she loved guys with red hair. His personality didn't matter at all, and he hooked up with her just because of that strange random reason. So I'm equating this to trends. Yeah, there's always going to be trends, and if you follow the trends in a perfect way, then good things are going to happen for you. However, I think the major things
we're talking about broad strokes.
Some major things I think don't ever change. I don't think from the 60s to now being confident and successful never worked against you, and if you're very good at those things, it always worked for you, I think.
And you know what? We also need to consider who are we attracting. If we're going for 9s and 10s of the world, those basic principles will always stay intact, I feel. I'm talking about the ever elusive 7 and 8s.
You have to have more. Your personality. The way I see this is your personality has to be deeper for people like that, and maybe you have to be. It's definitely would be. We determine what we like based on our social interaction and the way that we view ourselves and so forth. So, women that view themselves as better looking, doesn't matter if they actually are better looking.
Right.
Will have different kind of things that they like, and usually it's more dismissive behavior, maybe a little colder behavior. Mm-hmm. And maybe women that view themselves lower, maybe will need a little more compassion, or will need something a little different. That makes sense to me. Again, this goes back to social roles, but I'm not sure So where are we going from this?
What I was trying to point out is that the girls that consider themselves to be the 9s and 10s of the world, whether they are or not, will, I'm not going to say fall for, or in a way, because we fall for boobs and butts. So I will say they fall for all the dominant traits, all the things that we listed earlier. But it's those 6s and 8s specifically, the ones that actually people should be going for more because they're more accessible. They tend to be smarter. They tend to have a more realistic approach to things. They're the ones that also be a little neurotic because they're smart. That's just the price you pay for being smart. And they get hung up on certain details that they would label as sexist or misogynistic. And so, especially, again, this is a cyclical thing. This is specifically in the 90s, and I think it's coming back a little bit in the next few years. I think we're going to start seeing. Because especially with the movement of the method, they said the war of the sexes is over and guys won. They won the day that women considered pole dancing a legitimate form of exercise, and things like that is it's fantastic. God bless every one of them. Yeah. But I'm just weathering the storm and I'm preparing for the war to come because I feel like there's going to be another resistance sort of need for women to be independent, and with that goes a bunch of stupid resistance to things that ultimately they would prefer in the long run. They want a guy.
Are you saying women? I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you saying women are smarter women that are maybe don't consider them 10s and have a little less ego? Are you saying that they would be? They would resist what being the natural confidence, or they would resist
not natural confidence. That will always be good, which is what we talked about.
Oh, great.
Right. No, of course. Please. All people like confidence, not just women. Men and women are attracted to confidence. But then there's that thing where it's like the loudest guy in the room is the weakest guy in the room. There's certain things that people will judge as overcompensation. For me, it's women with excessive amount of tattoos and piercings. For women, it's guys that drive Humvees and are kind of yuppies. And again, these are the 7s and 8s that I am more attracted to because they get less hung up on superficial stuff. But again, there's a price you pay where they get a little more neurotic and they have their own social agenda of their own accomplishment. Like they'll have this sort of thing where it's like, oh, guys with the yellow Live Strong wristband they're unattracted to, and they're going to completely call this whole judgment on these little tropes, these little they'll get caught up on the details that'll represent bigger things that they actually are attracted to. And what I'm saying is,
well, that happen. I think that happens for everybody.
Yes. I feel like the girls that I'll want to have sex with, they get a little more hung up on things that I wouldn't do anyway, which is great. But
it seems like it seems like this is a little. Maybe you can give a few examples. One or two examples.
Yeah. For example, I dated a girl for a while who didn't like guys in wife beaters, and as you can see, I'm a huge fan just because they're cheap. They expose my arms and they keep me cool in the hot summer of Florida. But I had to shift gears away from that because she would associate that with misogynistic construction worker guys, and apparently her dad wore them and he was abusive. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But then I would do other stuff that her dad would also do that she'd be attracted to. So it's random, but it's not.
And do you think that was because she was more intelligent that she had that, or maybe
unfortunately,
because she was more abused?
it's because she was more intelligent. Now,
not because she was more abused.
Unfortunately, the two might be tied together. You might
in that circumstance.
In that particular, no. She was smart, and she happened to. Not she wasn't abused herself, but her mom was, and the dad. Those aggressive types, even if they don't hit you, that kind of violent mood and aura kind of bleeds into everything they do. Everything's a little more aggressive, and so I bet you now she's more attracted to those aggressive types. But when I was going out with her, she was resisting that, so she was going for more sensitive guys. So I had to play up my more sensitive qualities. You know what I mean? I always listen when I talk to people in general, with girls, but there's certain details that want to be recalled back. For example, another girl that I hooked up with, she actually was she was less impressed that I remembered the reasons why she liked this band but that was good that I remember that, but she was upset that I didn't remember her birthday or something really arbitrary like that. And it's just like, that's exactly the point. Women will get hung up on really arbitrary details.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. Yeah.
And those details that they get hung up on, that's what's cyclical. And things like the specific kind of way that somebody can peacock, the specific canned line somebody can feed to a girl, those are the things that I don't think people should bother learning because they're very temporary, and you can actually gain a lot of bad habits by learning that kind of stuff. But
that's a separate argument. But I think I see what you're saying. But
that's pretty much what I wanted to get into the cyclical nature of fads and details.
It has to be. I agree with you that.
But I agree with that the general principles.
I think you have to. I think the canned stuff is good, and because it forces you to go out there and learn things as an initial stepping stone. It's like you're going into a new sport and you have to read the basics of the sport. It doesn't mean that you're going to be doing excellently when you start out. But obviously, eventually you want to go to a point where you're incredibly genuine. Like you can't really,
right?
When you're thinking about pickup artists, you think they have these canned lines, but they probably have done them so many times that they come out genuinely for them. It doesn't matter if they're true or not.
But they don't mean it though.
And they don't mean it, and it's a very difficult lifestyle for them. But that's a separate point. I'm talking about for people coming in. And I'm saying,
sure.
If you're coming into it, you should. It may be good for you in the beginning, but obviously, you want to be congruent and consistent with what you're saying. But sometimes it is useful again to.
I feel like maybe
learn some of the theory
what anybody who wants to break into the dating scene for guys, I feel like what they should do is learn the broad strokes, the basics, and then get with a friend who's a writer, or try to come up with things yourself that follow these basic points. But the details, the things that you plug into the slots, they should totally be your own, because it's good to go into this already congruent. There's no reason why you can't be.
Yeah, but I want to go back one thing before, because you were talking about with smarter women being more, having more kind of a better observe. You basically seems like you were saying women.
We need to go back to porn at some point. Also,
women have better. You were saying smarter women. It seems like you were saying. I'm going to say it a slightly different way, but it seems like you were saying smarter women have kind of a better framework for understanding the world. But that's kind of a two-edged sword, because that means that they're also going to get hung up on some mental, some shortcut that they used, and they're going to care too much about one or two of them, or whatever.
That is 100% true. It's like think of it as a detective who goes home and is a little extra paranoid about his wife and her off time because he notices all the details.
That's true. And also heart surgeons are more likely to diagose regular patients that are having heart problems because they're more biased.
A neurologist will
that could be true, but I actually found obviously I learned about these things, and I actually found that it has to, for me it was talking to it could work very, very well for intelligent women because if you're confident and intelligent, then they can really appreciate things that if the underlying principle is the principle of confidence, they really, really appreciate it. And it's actually more rare for an 8 who's smart to be approached by somebody who's smart and confident. So it's kind of a rare combination. Whereas a person who's very attractive looks for these like people that have kind of a like extreme circumstances because they're so used to confident people approaching them, but shitty confident people. But they're so used to that they have to, and they build up such a persona for themselves because of how they value themselves based on their looks, that they expect this amazing persona of this person. You have to be, so if you look at all the supermodels, who do they date usually? It's all music producers,
photographers,
sometimes
race car drivers,
businessmen, a lot of, it has to be this amazing. Well, sometimes there's value in that if you're, obviously if you're one of those people, if you're a businessman and you just really have your own thing and you're confident and you're just happy with yourself, that's good. But a lot of times it's the persona.
It's just sad that oftentimes arrogance and confidence will have similar symptoms, and
that's why you got to look for happiness.
Right.
Because happiness has confidence in it.
Exactly.
But it doesn't have arrogance.
It's true. And arrogance to me is just overcompensation for a lack of confidence. And so often, so more often than not, you'll get a guy who will display all these values that girls will consider attractive at first. And what's happening is that guy in the beginning, when he first started, going for models or whatever, or just the hot girls, he would have the instinct of leaving them before they, that's why there's a lot of one-night stands with these kind of assholes, because they know that if they hang out long enough, they'll figure out who they really are, and they'll walk away first. And so they end up preemptively doing what they had to do to preserve whatever fragile confidence or whatever fragile persona they have.
You become to and if that's pretty terrible. You become to think,
it's a
if
negative
I don't
cycle.
tell that joke, if I don't tell that one story, this person wouldn't like me. It's completely ridiculous.
If I don't walk away, she'll walk away first.
Yeah.
It's a very sad thing, and it's a negative cycle because the more girls they fuck, the more confident they are in their system of walking away.
And not in themselves.
And not in themselves. And so eventually they forget who they are. They start becoming this lie. They fake it till they make it in the worst possible way.
And that's only one aspect of how it corrupts you. Even if it doesn't corrupt you in that way. But let me just say about that.
The hot 20-something-year-olds end up rewarding that kind of behavior, and that's the sad part.
Well, I mean, but they're also rewarding that kind of behavior also because they get hit on by really douchey guys, and you have to... And some of them are mal-informed, so they don't really understand what's a good guy or how does that work.
Very skewed perspective on the world.
I went to Sweden. I went to Sweden last summer.
Where everyone's
Sweden,
hot.
Everybody's attractive.
So it's the equalizer. Yeah.
Everybody's attractive, and I talked to women there, and I've noticed that there are women there, and I knew this from before because of just how their culture is, because it does happen to be that in northern European countries, it seems that people are more cold in general, a little bit, not less polite.
Manic depressant.
Not suicidal, but rather
Russians are very manic depressant. All of them.
But it happens to be that they're more restrained, and it seems to be especially true for men over there. Men are not very kind of confident in the conventional, old-fashioned way, and over there. And actually, women are even though women there are quite beautiful, they're actually accustomed to even making the first move in various circumstances. They would go to guys and talk to them. And a lot of times it's alcohol that gets people, because people are so constrained there in an unnatural way, restrain themselves.
Disciplined.
Once they have one drink in, everything comes out. It's kind of like, what was the stereotype for Christian girls in a Christian school, or what is it? Christian schoolgirls or
the Catholic schoolgirls?
Catholic schoolgirls. Yeah, it's something similar.
Right. That they're all at church. They all go to church. They're all repressed,
but it's a thin line that actually builds all this tension.
Yeah, the best example or the best thing that exemplifies that behavior is their sex life, which is they want to maintain their virginity until their marriage, so they'll go anal.
Right.
And or they won't drink, but they'll do cocaine.
Right.
And it's just it's all part of that sort of,
But in any case, before you finish, I just...
You brought up the European thing, and I want to transition to that, but go ahead.
So, in any case, in Sweden, I've noticed that women there were, especially very beautiful women also, were very receptive to being talked to by a guy, probably also because it almost never happens. But it wasn't just that. It was also the fact that it never happens means that their guards are not up the first second you talk to them, and they actually get to hear you. So if you're interesting, they'll listen to you for a few minutes, and if you're really interesting, obviously anything can happen later. But they're more receptive initially, which makes a huge difference. And
we're also very lucky to be men and not be judged solely on our looks. So that's
also good. But that actually humbled me, and it actually made me think it's actually guys' fault. It's not women's fault. Here, I think it's. Well, it's a combination.
It's both, yeah.
It's both, but I deduced that in the States, women are sometimes more less pleasant. It's because they just met enough guys who are very confident, but also
arrogant.
Not good people
not
in some ways. Arrogant, or it could be arrogance where you're compromising for a weak ego.
Confidence,
but it could
happy.
be something else. It could confidence can be in all sorts of ways. You could be a cheater, or you could be insecure in some way. It could be all sorts of things.
You know, it's interesting. You know which group of people have the highest confidence? Criminals.
Well, they do have a lot of confidence, but I would say they have fearless confidence. It's what it is.
Fearlessness, maybe, sure.
Uh-huh.
Well, I like that distinction we've made earlier between confidence and arrogance, which is the factor missing there is happiness.
Yeah,
so,
but you can, for criminals, it's something a little different, but it's also lacks happiness. But for like a psychopathic criminal, they don't.
Not necessarily sociopaths, because they feel guilty about it much later. But the most confidence they have is that self-serving sort of rationalization they can have about it later.
No, they have plenty of confidence. They just don't have, and they don't have qualms about something. But because they're devoid of conscience, it's not like they have suffering, but they don't have any happiness. So they're like a void.
Right.
So the happiness is missing there too. Yeah.
Also, disparity between them and the parents and a bunch of other factors. We're not going to get into that, but what I wanted to bring up that I thought of earlier was, American hot girls versus European hot girls, or rather, American hot girls versus hot girls all over the world. And the best example of that is Denise Richards in the James Bond movie, where she's supposed to play a nuclear physicist. Right. Well, that never rang true for anybody because we had this subconscious understanding that hot girls in America are absolutely incompetent and useless in pretty much everything else.
You're saying as this being a factor of why they're so difficult to talk to also?
Yes, this all goes into it.
I think that's true.
Also,
I did, yeah.
There's a sort of, don't mess with that. That makes a lot of noise. I want to give you that stress reliever back in the car. Maybe that's better.
I'm very stressed right now.
I understand. Well, it's like the hot girl mentality in this country, in America specifically. It's because of the various factors of how they're treated growing up, the way they're portrayed in the media, whatever. There's a sort of hot girl spoiled entitledness that they get, that they feel like, well, why do I need to study? I'll just marry rich. Like a lot of girls actually say that to themselves and out loud eventually. But versus the hot girls that in other countries, Asia, well, that's not a country, and all parts around the world, there are continents like Asia and Europe. A lot of them, a big sense of discipline and emphasis on education is usually placed above anything else. Yeah. And so they end up, you could see a really smoking hot, astrophysicist that exists all over Europe and all over Asia. And, it's because hotness is equally distributed around the world for the most part. And the difference is the attitude towards it and how it's rewarded and things like health and things like education and emphasis on discipline, emphasis on family. So it's just, So the way you'd approach a hot girl in Europe would be how we would probably approach 7 or 8s here in America. So that is why I'm going to move. And that's what I wanted to announce on this here podcast.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
But also I want to say, well, it's not true that all of them will be easy to talk to. For example, if
easier
to
to
Eastern
talk
Europe,
to. Yeah?
You're going to have a hard time.
Well, because I don't speak the language, of course.
There's going to be...
also
there's going to be some other reasons.
Because I don't have gold dangling off my...
You're going to have... Big American.
But if I have a nickel, I can buy a hotel, like Eurotrip suggested.
Yeah, they just buy the women. They skip a step. But it's more difficult. I would say that it depends on the place in Europe, but I think you were right that, it definitely is true in Sweden. The women are definitely more independent there. And then so... all of these, they're not as reliant about their looks, but there's another issue here, which is, I think 50%, as much as important, which is women don't have the double standard of being considered a slut or something for,
right.
Women there are basically men, so, if a woman hooks up with a few guys, she doesn't have to, not tell her friends about it or, hide it or feel guilty. women there are, have a similar status to men. So it's just have a good time, and the society is much more liberal.
They're also more atheists, correct?
I think it goes with it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
There's less emphasis on religion in Sweden, if
probably
I'm correct.
Is. That probably is.
I attest a lot of that sort of
guilt
and repression and sexual repression on our emphasis in religion here in this country.
Definitely
and
related.
it's man, when will we retire that? Because it's the most antiquated
Giving you
and
major biblical blue balls right now.
I mean, of biblical proportions. Yes,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But it's whatever. I mean, I wouldn't want to be too successful with the hottest girls in this country anyway, just because of the headache it'll bring in the long term. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
What we need to understand is a lot of the things that work to get laid will not work to shape a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And there's a huge disparity between the two things. So it's like two different kind of skills. And my skills as a boyfriend, I feel them diminishing as my skills as an approacher of women are increasing. And it's something that I'm trying to stay really aware of, because I would hate to be that guy one day, wake up and just be like, I'm sorry, babe, what's your name again? Like, I never want to have to go through that. At the same time, man, like, my goals for getting married are always, I'm pushing that first down line every single year. I feel like I remember when I was in high school, I was like, man, all right, so, I'll bang a bunch of chicks in college, and then I'll fall in love at some point, probably my senior or junior year. We'll go out, and then we'll get married when I'm around 25. Now I'm like, all right. When I get to my mid to late 30s, I'll settle down, whatever. I bet you by the time I'm 30s, I'll be like, all right, my mid 40s, I'll just, then I'll
make my second blockbuster.
And then when I'm in my 40s, thank you. And then when I'm in my 40s, I'm gonna pull a Clooney. I'm just not gonna get married or whatever, and because it's just like, there's also that biological thing, right? I mean, girls are better to have kids when they're in the mid to late 20s, but it's like the worst time to commit to them because that's when they're flakiest. Well, not always.
No, actually,
not always, but I mean, that line is moving though.
Mid to late 20s is the least flaky. Flakiest is 18 to 24. Is actually when party time.
10 years ago,
before
bro.
Biological
10
clock.
yeof ago, there's a lot of girls now who are living like 30 is the new teens, and so like a lot of girls, especially the girls that I would be attracted to with the hang-ups on the stupid details, but they're actually smart and they can appreciate my jokes and stuff like that. And they can forgive the gut. But they're the ones that I hear them a lot, like, resisting the idea of getting married. Like a lot of them, they want to have kids at some point, but they feel like they can have kids without having to get married, which tells me that they're getting these new hang-ups on the idea of these kind of conservative, supposedly, whatever conservative labels they want to give things. But
I could start a whole conversation about this, but maybe it's a hang-up for you that you have to be married to have kids. I mean, is that really necessary? That's another point.
I do believe that you need to be with somebody who will stick around. And if you're not married, it gives them less incentive to stick around. That's all it is.
Incentive, it almost seems like, if you think about it one way, it's almost like a forcing.
It's not forcing. It's more like both parties are willing to put down on paper and to make a declaration in front of their community. By that I mean their family and friends, saying, hey, I'm going to stick with this person and procreate.
Some people feel that's true, but some people feel like it's not necessary, like very, especially if you're very liberal-minded in the past few generations. Some people feel like that's...
Well, a lot of them are products of divorce, so they've gotten used to it. But
all of us are product for divorce.
Not you. They get a divorce until after you grew up. That's a big difference than when you're 13 or when you're 11, when you're in a complicated age, and then you divorce. It affects you differently. I feel that to get the most out of your kid's potential, there's got to be routine, there's got to be stability, and the best way to do that, I believe, personally, is in a married family. Now, what does that mean? It means the two people have to have identical goals in terms of and values. And that's why religion gets introduced into the idea of it, because there's a go-to manual whether we should do something or not. Well, what does the Bible say? You know what I mean? So that's why I believe that's become a big thing. Now, I don't think that marriage needs to equal to religion. You know what I mean? But I do feel there's got to be more stakes than just because I feel like it. We've fostered a generation, especially our generation, of just instant gratification and do what makes you feel good. Just be happy. And sometimes that's not enough. You got to do what's right, and that's something that especially amongst my friends who are much more liberally inclined. One thing that I think the conservatives got right, which is setting aside personal bullshit to do what is ultimately important for the kids. I feel like there's a lot more of that amongst conservatives.
I wonder if actually settling. That's true, but I think the main key. I agree with you that you said that stability is important, and I think it's the main. It's paramount. I agree, but I don't. But somebody really needs to do a study and see if the people that commit to actually having a marriage end up staying there together more than people that don't commit to a marriage. I'm very skeptical.
I know the numbers
because a marriage seems like a marriage is sort of. So they're the same, you're saying?
It's currently
half of the people that agree to stay married.
This country is currently 55% divorced.
I'm saying versus the people who just stay in I forgot what it's called, loving partnership. I don't know what you call when you're not
civil
married.
What is it?
No, but they're straight. But I don't know what it's called. But
civil union.
You just stay in a relationship and you don't get married. I wonder if
there's
actually
no
getting
statistics on divorce of that because they just break up and there's no record of it.
That's true, but I wonder how much actually signing that actually binds people together, because to me it seems like that signing, if you're not really into that person, you're likely to get a divorce anyways. Right. That signing is not going to matter.
I feel it's not
going to force you to stay.
No, but it's a sign.
Your kids are going to force you to stay. If you have morals,
it's a sign that you'll stay. See, it's
not
backwards.
No.
You think of it as like, oh, I'm gonna sign this contract and therefore I'll stay. It's more like I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay so much that I'm gonna write it down. That's how I think me and my wife, my future wife, are gonna see it. And I think that it's.
But I feel like the way that I'm gonna see
also
it is
for legal reasons.
I like you so much.
Marrying gives a lot of insurance and tax benefits. That if
That's
you're going to stay
point.
with, it's one of many points. The whole point of getting married is there's so many factors and reasons to do it. And
but we're breaking them down right now. So that's a valid point. But that's a very good point with the tax benefits and so forth. But I'm gonna say that's a good reasoning. But
it's
my reasoning would be
I like you so much. Sharing an account. I think all
that could be very
important.
useful. But I'm gonna say my reason would be, and I'm not really sure where I stand on this. But but one reason could be.
I'm always changing.
One reason could be I like you so much, and I know you for such a long time.
I don't need to get married.
I don't need to get married. I don't need to prove anything. And if I was gonna stay, it was gonna be for you or for the kids. If I find out that you cheated on me with 5 guys, or that you're a terrible person, or if we don't have kids, I'm gonna break it off with you regardless if we're married or not. To me, it seems like that is the most superficial thing. It used to be a great reason to keep people together 100 years ago, because financially
50 years ago.
Yeah, because people did not have the financial independence. So, like you're saying, money, being married gives you all
splitting
the
house,
and it would kill people, right? But today it doesn't seem to be the case.
So you would be cool with just being roommates with the mother of your kids?
It's a matter of cost-benefit analysis. I don't find it sentimental. The sentimental part is the connection. But what I do think that if it's financially useful,
the cost benefits is mainly what I'm looking at for marriage, but it's also for the kids. For example, I wouldn't want to have kids with somebody unless I'm married, but at the same time, I would never want to get married unless I'm having kids. Does that make sense? So if I don't want to get married with somebody because I'm in love with them. I want to be married with somebody because I'm ready to have kids with them, and that's how in love with them I am. And so if I'm
symbolizing.
So let's say this is gonna sound terrible, and hope. Please take this in the spirit in which it's intended. But if I was with a woman who I'm completely in love with, and turns out she just doesn't want to have kids, I would never marry her, but I'll move in with her. And I feel like the marriage step is all that legal stuff, all that tax stuff. That's what, for me, and for me to go through all that headache and the potential and exposure. Because remember, if things don't work out, if she decides to leave me, chances are she'll take the house. Yeah. Because that's where the court system here is put together, and it's totally fucking stupid. So really, I should be attracted to the notion of a woman who doesn't want to get married but still wants to have kids. But the reason why I want to get married is because it's sort of like it's a gesture, and it's not an empty one because of all the, i.e., all the tax benefits. But to me, that's saying that listen, I'm gonna. It's evidence and it's a declaration. That's what it is. We don't need an actual priest. We don't have to do it in church. We can have it on the beach. It could be you fucking reading off of whatever. But I think that's important because, first of all, it causes a little more cognitive dissonance when you decide to leave. You know what I mean? And that's the whole religion thing. You know, it's like if you leave, God will be upset. But for me, it's more like I want a stable home, and this is not. It takes a village to raise a family. And if you're declaring to the community, hey, I'm going to stay with this guy for the rest of my life, that means a lot to me. And it's not so much marriage or the wedding that I'm looking forward to. It's someone saying, hey, it's kind of like it's almost like it's like when you really believe someone's going to win, you put money on it, not for the profit of the gamble, but just as a gesture of you believe in someone so much that I'm willing to put money on it. That's really what it is, and it may be an antiquated notion, but I think
for the financial reasons, there's some value in it, and I will say also that that's my opinion. And
I mean, it's not just that, but it's
I
the
would
gesture.
say also that something that we've missed here is it's when you said you particularly want to get married if you have kids. I mean, when you have kids, the expenses are a lot more. So that's a much more important time to have all your names and everything congruent. And
the practical reasons will pile up over and over again.
But I'm saying if you strip all the practical reasons.
But if it's just a theory, I like the gesture.
You like the gesture, but also it could be a sweet gesture, but also that's one way to look at it. But I also would say that if it's a person you really know really well for like 5 years, let's say, before, and you know them really well, you really connect with them.
You can't really know somebody.
The gesture
with marriage though,
that gesture shouldn't make a difference. You understand what I'm saying?
It's
not the connection. It shouldn't make a difference.
Then why not? Then why not get married?
No, I'm not saying I'm not getting married too, but I'm saying it's a matter of. I think the financial part is a bigger part to it. I mean, anything could be a gesture.
There's a shitload of reasons to get married.
Anything that shows trust is a gesture.
There's only one reason not to get married, which is I don't trust you. And that's what I'm alarmed when someone is resistant to the idea of marriage, which tells me it's not the marriage you're against. It's the notion of exposing yourself emotionally. And so that's what I don't like. It's like girls don't get tattoos because they think they look nice. They get tattoos because they're making sort of statement
that could be an argument, and that's especially true if marriage does have financial benefits. Again,
of course it does.
But
hell yeah,
it could be a thing where some people just don't like. Those are other
they're just
things.
Scarred.
Authorities. No. It has nothing to do with relationships. Some people just don't like authorities acknowledging something from them, like they're maybe anarchists by nature or not complete anarchists.
Who is though?
I know there's many people like that. They just don't think that they don't want the government to give them a seal of approval on a relationship like that. I could see many people that would just feel like that. That has nothing to do with relationships.
To me, that's not.
That could be
that's never the case. Not true.
I know people that actually.
You know people who told you that, but that's never the.
No, but
that's not the underlying
that's
issue.
The part of me that's against it. That's that part. It's
you
not
personally. Remember, guys and girls have different motives behind marriage.
But that would be the part if I decide not to get married. But if it was financially better, then I probably would. But that would be probably the part. It would be that I just don't want something. It would just feel silly that I need. I think it's
sillier. I think it's sillier to resist because of the country, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it takes. You're burning more calories.
Depends on what are the actual benefits. But you know the reason behind marriage, right? It was purely economical, a large government reason. Well, it wasn't government; it was a large kingdom reason.
The right to bear arms was something because the government might overpower us. Now it's because we like to hunt and kill gays. Whatever. The point is,
the reason?
What?
The reason why we have marriage?
The reason why I have marriage? Yeah, so that our tribes, neighboring tribes can't steal the women or what have you.
It was something like that. It was the kings.
It was super archaic.
The kings enjoyed having more than one woman.
Yes.
One woman at a time, and the lords and so forth, and so the higher classes, and so they were afraid that basically the commoners were going to take more women from them. So they instituted this rule.
It's property.
A lot of dysfunctional people use this argument against monogamy, but
that's the whole point. A lot of this,
again,
rhetoric about politics and, I mean, how ridiculous does it sound when someone says, "I'm not going to get married until the gays are allowed to get married"? Stuff like that. It's all bullshit, so that people don't have to commit. It comes down to psychological.
I would say it's a total
of attaching themselves to somebody else. It's also this country's strong notion of individuality, and we feel like we're sacrificing that when we have family. And the truth is, yeah, you are. When you have kids, say goodbye to your pride and principles, because they don't matter as much as the things that you're creating and raising and populating the country with for the future. Yeah. And I think that you need to set it's a lot of ego that's getting in the way of marriage. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of people should never get married. A lot of people should never have kids. That's just the truth. Yeah. A lot of people, I would say half the people in this country should never have kids. And I'm totally for paying the poor to sterilize them. I'm totally for programs like that, because then it'll trickle down. We'll get rid of a lot of crime. We'll get rid of a lot of problems in this country. But I feel like if you have this need and you feel like you're ready to have kids, chances are you're in an emotional state to be ready to get married. And you can't have one before the other because one's indicative of your maturity, in my very humble opinion. And we gotta. I think we should take this home pretty soon. I think we should wrap things up, because I really got to go to the bathroom and take a crap. And unless you want to have
very humble crap.
A very humble gold crap.
Okay. Well, I'll say I don't think people need to be sterilized, Julian.
I think
I
people.
stand for the people.
Poor people need to be sterilized.
They need to be educated, not sterilized.
They need to pull out. Is what I'm saying.
They need to pull out of their world of ignorance.
They need to learn to pull out of a vagina before they ejaculate. That's all I'm saying. Like they need to not. The poor people are having more kids than the ones that grow up to raise, who grow up to steal car radios. What?
They're poor, Julian, because of years of oppression and.
Not always.
Usually is.
Oppression from who though? Each other, most likely.
No. And the reason why
I'm not talking minorities here. I'm including white trash in this conversation.
I welcome that inclusion, but I would say that in the countries when you have a high level of poverty, you also have very strong deregulated governments. And
that's true. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure how much power I also want to get. It's funny. It's like the people. A lot of people blame what's happening right now in the country in terms of economy to these unregulated corporations, but it's like. Who's going to regulate them? The corrupt government that works for them anyway. So it's just it's very strange how we distribute power because ultimately it's the same five guys and
it's a libertarian argument versus the communist argument. One of them talks about
control. I'm against both of them.
We're afraid of control of the government versus afraid of control of corporations. It's a tricky argument.
It's a very tricky argument.
But you do look at countries. I don't know the system. The
also
details of the financial
population is a huge aspect as well as geopolitics. For example, Sweden benefits a lot from being physically apart.
There's true there are advantages and disadvantages, but if you look at some aspects of countries that just have still a democracy, but just a slightly more liberal democracy, you see a greater level of freedom, more social benefits. People have basic rights like I believe life insurance, and they can go to school for free. Things that are very basic and reasonable, and their systems are working better. Also, it seems it's much more obvious if you're an immigrant or if you're somebody who lived abroad not in a third world country where the quality of products is just much higher in countries when there's less control of large corporations. Food tastes better. Food is a lot better. Quality of clothes. These things may seem trivial or maybe you don't even recognize them, but when you go to countries like Sweden, you'd be surprised at just the quality of items around you.
Isn't it really hard to immigrate also into Sweden?
It is very difficult.
There's an isolation aspect that Sweden can benefit from, but also I feel that Sweden also, with some things that kind of go a little overboard with their freedoms, because when things are just too excessed, people want to push those boundaries even further. I.e. Mambla. Or not Mambla necessarily, but other.
Well, that's just a ridiculous thing. So I can just say I can imagine a country like Sweden without Mambla. I mean
Sure, but it does. The thing is that some things go with that. Like when you have an extreme amount of freedoms, people go run wild with it sometimes, and you will have, it is a trade-off exactly. So it's a balancing act, and it's one that I think that we can.
But it seems like it's very obvious.
Figure out.
You're trying to finish this. It seems like it's very obvious. It seems like it's very obvious that that what's going on in America in the last 20 years, economically is not the right way to go about it. And it seems like there are countries, maybe Canada, maybe not Sweden, there are countries that are finding a little better way of doing things.
Economically, for sure. In fact, it's scary. It's actually scary for the corporations right now. How there's a whole, especially in the past 5 years. There's been a whole resurgence and a whole emergence, rather, of independent businesses thanks to the internet. And I feel like that's what's going to end up saving this country in terms of economy. We're going to see a lot of collapses of a lot of long time corporation stuff, but we're going to see a lot of emergence of a lot of small independent company, self-sustaining businesses. A lot of the idea of the employee, I think, is going to start diminishing, and the idea of the independent business owner. Small business owner is going to come back again, which was a lot bigger in the early days of America.
It was bigger even 10 years ago. I mean, it was bigger recently. So
since the 50s, it's been a huge get a job, being an employee, and work until you retire. That was the American dream. Get a house in the suburbs, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, a wife, whatever. And that being a lifelong employee was climbing the corporate ladder. That was really the big notion, and then it kind of collapsed around the 70s and the 80s with the whole Reaganomics and all that, trying to bring it back again. But I think that up until that point, there was the whole think of things like people like Henry Ford, even people like Al Capone who were making off their money off illegal booze or whatever, but they were still independent of any kind of huge. They were starting their own huge corporations. So instead of Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and everybody buying everything else.
Think about it. Actually, things are set up. My dad is a businessman. Is also
totally
telling me how to. Yeah, actually. Let's go. Okay.
No, I was saying louder because
okay.
You're making all your good points at
my dad was telling me that actually that there has been a shift towards large and big businesses. Yeah, in the States, and it's very obvious. One example is the place where he rents his business. It's a parking lot. It's not a parking lot. It's a warehouse, and it's a
warehouse lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot that has multiple warehouses, and the owner of it would not allow you to. My dad wanted to buy it and not pay so much money in rent, but the owner would not allow him to just buy one unit. You have to buy the whole lot, which is like 7 warehouses or more. So this is one example, but this trend has been going on where things are moving towards more large businesses. Where if you're trying to and that's how the rules are set up now. So if you're trying to have a small business, it's going to be more difficult for you to be successful.
Yeah,
seems like the case.
It's interesting, but okay. Well, I think that's all the time we have for now. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Avner for swinging by.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, buddy. Anytime. And so this is Jules saying, "Zip it up and zip it out."